In this session, you'll learn about the benefits of the CyberArk solution and how to use it. As an employee, you are required to log in and interact with various systems and different types of software. To access these systems and software, you must provide and remember multiple passwords. In many cases, the systems you access hold privileged information, such as customer information or sensitive company information. When you have access to privileged information, it makes you a privileged user, and unfortunately, a prime target for attackers. The problem is that most breaches now involve stolen credentials, and whenever possible, the attacker goes after the privileged user's credentials, because these are the ones that provide the access they need to get control over the IT infrastructure. Over the years, companies asked their privileged users to come up with strong passwords and to keep those passwords confidential. However, this is insufficient, as it is hard for most of us to memorize complex passwords, and attackers these days can easily crack any password. This is where the CyberArk solution can help you. The solution provides you with single sign-on capabilities to all privileged applications. Now, you only need to memorize one password, and it will connect you securely to the system that you need. CyberArk also provides more secured workflows against cyber attacks by validating the identity of the user using multi-factor authentication and limiting and monitoring access to sensitive data.
Let's see how simple it is to connect to a system using the CyberArk solution in the upcoming topics.
I know that change isn't always easy. As a Windows administrator, I want to help you understand CyberArk's Privilege Access Manager and why it is really going to benefit you and keep your organization safe. Let's begin your journey with a story about John and Eva. Both John and Eva work for the Andor online clothing company, but they have separate roles and conduct themselves differently in their daily lives. Let's meet John first. John is an extremely qualified Windows administrator. John knows the importance of security because he has privileged access to so many critical systems. John knows that to be secure against the ongoing threat from bad actors, he must be vigilant. John uses unique, complex passwords for all the systems he accesses and routinely rotates those passwords. John would never store any credentials on his system. Instead, he has managed to memorize them all. Memorizing all the complex passwords and then changing them on a regular basis has made life tough for John, but he understands the threat and takes it upon himself to make sure he does everything he can to make himself and his organization secure. Let's move across the hallway and find out a little more about our friend Eva. Eva is a developer for her organization. She loves to experiment with systems because that helps her find creative solutions to programming problems. Eva lives a less cautious lifestyle. She knows she has no access to any production systems, and therefore does not worry too much about being a victim of a breach. Eva does what she needs to be successful in her work by taking part in many reputable online forums, email lists, Discord servers, to share knowledge and ideas with many fellow developers. Ultimately, Eva is successful and is quite the developer. This is where our stories collide. One day, Eva opens an email that seemingly came from one of her normal online forums, and she clicks a link without fully reviewing the message. Eva unexpectedly introduced malware to her system. The malware harvests credentials that have been used on Eva's system, including those of the desktop administrator who recently helped Eva install a new printer driver. Using the stolen desktop administrator credential, the malware spreads to many other workstations, including John's, who is our security superstar. The malware installs a keylogger on John's system and captures the credentials he is typing while doing his work. Suddenly, several critical systems are vandalized using John's credentials. John, who is ever so careful, has been a victim of a breach and is upset. Because it is John's credentials that were used, management is looking to John for answers. John did nothing wrong but still managed to become a victim. Eva, although clumsy, still had good intentions to be the best developer she could. This was the only time Eva has ever made such a mistake, something that is common, and can in fact happen to any one of us. This story is all too possible in our day-to-day activities. As you explore this education, you will learn how to navigate CyberArk and all the benefits that come with it. After the breach, Under Online Close decided that CyberArk Privilege Access Manager will be the best solution to reduce the risk of another attack. John wonders what this means to him. John has always been so diligent about his passwords. Will he still need to remember all of them? Will he need to change them more often? With new security, John is concerned this will add layers of difficulty for him and slow things down. Well, John, there is good news. You can now have security without adding any extra steps. With CyberArk, there is no longer a need to remember long, complex passwords. Changing passwords is easy with CyberArk and should encourage everyone to do it more often. CyberArk prevents you from becoming a victim of social engineering because you can't reveal a password you don't know. John now wishes this had been in place. He might not have had his credentials used in the attack. The CyberArk portal allows you to view and sort your account's lists and securely connect to systems and applications such as Windows machines, SSH devices, database, and more. Why don't we look at how John can perform these functions in the CyberArk web portal?
From the CyberArk web portal, select your organization's authentication method. Log in as a user with permissions to view and connect to accounts. By default, you will see a list of all the accounts that you are authorized to access. In this example, you can see Windows accounts only. You can filter the accounts list in the Views tab, My Accounts, with the following options. Recently used. A list of the accounts you recently used. Favorites. View accounts that you use frequently with a single click. This list is personal to each user, and accounts are added and removed from it manually. Checked out. View accounts that have been checked out. You can also filter the list by status. Disabled by CPM. A list of accounts that have been disabled automatically by the CPM and are not currently managed automatically. Failed. A list of accounts that could not be managed successfully by the CPM, resulting in an error. Newly added. A list of new accounts that were added to PAM. Disabled by user. A list of accounts that have been disabled manually by users and are not currently managed automatically by the CPM. You can modify the default view by clicking here. Use the search box to search for specific accounts. You can specify multiple keywords. Your recent searches appear in the Recent tab. You can save them for later use. And find them in the Saved tab. Minimize and expand the filter section here. Based on your permissions, you may or may not be allowed to show and copy the account password. Click Connect to launch a secure connection to the target machine. Enter or select a reason for connection. You can also connect through an HTML5 gateway if applicable. This option opens a new tab on your browser instead of downloading an RDP file. For users who have access to Linux accounts, the process is the same. Click the RDP file to launch a single sign-on connection. You are now connected to the Linux target machine. Now you know how to view and connect with privileged accounts using the CyberArk web portal.
John liked the demo and wants to know more. Let's move on and see what other benefits and abilities CyberArk offers. John is still a little apprehensive. He is wondering about the breach and how, because his credentials were used, it looked as though he was responsible. Well, John, with CyberArk, you can check out a password and have it locked to any other users attempting to check out the same password. It only allows other users to check out the same password once it has been checked back in. This gives John exclusive access to the privileged account. Having full control and tracking of the password allows a record of who used the credentials and when. Had this been in place during the breach, John's credentials would have been safe because even if it was being used, John would be on record as not having access to it. The only way the password can be checked out is if the following happens. John or the user manually checks in the password. If the user disconnects from their session, a system administrator manually checks the password back in, or if the system automatically releases and rotates the password after a predefined period of time. Once again, John likes what he hears but would like to see how this works in the system.
From the CyberArk web portal, select your organization's authentication method. Log in as a user with permissions to view accounts and launch privileged sessions. Click the ellipsis button and select Show to retrieve the account's password. If a one-time password is enforced alongside account checkout and check-in, you will see the time frame the password is accessible for. During this time frame, the password is locked and accessible only for you. When the time frame expires, the password is automatically released and rotated, unless you first check the password back into the vault yourself. Now the account is locked, and you are the only one who can access it. Other users who try to retrieve the password see the following error. Once you are done using the password, check in the account to unlock it. The account is now marked for check-in. After a few minutes, the system releases the account and changes the password. When you connect to a target machine using CyberArk Privileged Single Sign-On, the account is checked out and inaccessible to other users apart from you, just like when showing or copying a password. The account is automatically checked in after you disconnect from your session, and the password will be rotated shortly after. Now you know how to connect to targets when account checkout and check-in is enforced.
Administrators like John must be careful with their privileged accounts, even when using a tool like CyberArk. While CyberArk reduces the risk of unauthorized use of privileged accounts, it does not reduce the risk of bad decisions when using them legitimately. But with CyberArk's dual control function, we can create some safeguards. Dual control creates a request and approval process, meaning any time a privileged account is used, at least two people will have to agree that is necessary. This creates a check against rash use of a privileged account. We have provided a quick video explaining how dual control works. Take a minute and review the process with John.
Let's look at how the control works.
Authorized safe members can either grant or deny requests to access accounts. This feature adds an additional measure of protection because it lets the organization see who wants to access the information in the safe, when, and for what purpose. First, the user creates a request. In the request, the user specifies the reason for accessing the account, whether they will access it once or multiple times, and the time period during which they will access it. A notification about the request is sent to users who are authorized to confirm this request. Next, the request is confirmed or rejected by the authorized users. This can be done from the web portal or from the CyberArk mobile app. The number of authorized users who are required to confirm requests is defined in the master policy. In the final step, the user connects to the account. Each time an authorized user responds to the request, the user who created it receives a notification. When the total number of required confirmations is received for the request, this user receives a final notification. The user can now activate the confirmation and access the account according to the request specifications.
John now understands that dual control diffuses responsibility by ensuring that it's impossible to use a password on his own, because it requires at least 2 people to access the requested information. John, being a Windows administrator, realizes that he might be on both sides of the dual control as someone who would need to request access to a safe and someone who would approve the request. Although this does not happen often, CyberArk has ensured that no one can approve their own requests.
Now, let us see how John uses them in his system.
From the CyberArk web portal, select your organization's authentication method. Log in as a user with permissions to view accounts and launch privileged sessions. To access an account in an environment where dual control is enforced, you must first create a request. Click Request Connection. Specify a reason for the connection. You may see a list of predefined reasons you will need to choose from. You can request a one-time connection or specify a time frame. Toggle the button here to request multiple access during the selected time frame. If you have the relevant permissions, you may also see who can confirm your request. Finally, send your request. The request is now pending approval. From the approver point of view, you will receive an email containing the request details. Click the link in the email to review the request in the CyberArk web portal. Requests waiting for your approval can be found under Incoming Requests. Approve or reject the request here. Specify the reason for confirmation and click Confirm. Back to the requester point of view, you will receive an email that your request has been confirmed. You can also see the request is confirmed in the web portal. You can now connect to the account according to the request specifications. Now you know how to connect to targets when dual control is enforced.
John can now recognize that the security offered by CyberArk is great and simple to navigate. However, John is very proficient using the native tools he has been working with. He wishes that he could still gain the benefits from CyberArk while continuing to use the tools he is familiar with. Great news, John! CyberArk offers the ability to use your native tools. It also offers its own remote desktop manager that is available to you. Let's look at John's system and walk him through the steps to configure his native tool to integrate with CyberArk. We can begin by accessing John's remote desktop manager and right-click on a device shortcut from the menu. John will then select Properties. From the Properties menu, John will navigate to the General tab and take note of the host entry box. Historically, this would be populated with the target machine and may even have the username and password populated, which is not a good practice. What John can do now is leave those fields blank, and in the host field, add the PSN server. Next, under the Programs tab, John will need to add a command that will point to the PSM and direct it to sign in as a specific user on this machine using this connection. The connection that previously went directly to the target now goes through the PSM. John can now double-click on the shortcut, enter his CyberArk credentials, and will be connected to the target machine using the native tool John has always used, but with the added security of CyberArk. John can also connect to a specific application. The process is exactly like connecting to a target, but now the command will use a different connection. Instead of an RDP session, John will direct it to an application. John can even connect to any credential in the safe using a secure shell from his native tools. With all these options, John is feeling good about how this will not interrupt his day-to-day workflow. But John is also curious about the option offered by CyberArk. To get started, John downloads the PSM Connection Manager tool from the CyberArk Marketplace. When using this tool, John will log in with his credentials first. This connects him to CyberArk, allowing him to simply access the shortcuts directly. He does not need to configure them like he did with his native tool. This is great. John now has options. John is very particular to his native tool and decided he will continue to configure his shortcuts to work with the PSM server. However, he has recommended the CyberArk tool to some colleagues who have found they really like it. With either option, CyberArk is making it simple and easy to connect without sacrificing security.
John has a question within himself whether he can change the screen's resolution. Let's see how he handles this.
Log in to your CyberArk account. From the menu, select Administration, then select Configuration Options. Select Options. Find and select the component you want to configure. From the Value column, adjust the full screen, height, or width options.
There he go. He has found the options to change the screen resolution. He also thinks about using multiple monitors. Let's see how he finds options to do this.
Expand Component, then expand Target Settings. Right-click and add a parameter. Set the name as Enable Multi-Monitor. Set the value to Yes.
Yes, he can now use multiple monitors.